Hey there, Swing Smarter family. Joey Myers here from hittingperformancelab.com. And today's episode is an absolute masterclass that no baseball or softball coach, parent, or athlete should miss. Joining me is Coach Jerry Weinstein, one of the most respected minds in the game, period. With over 6 decades of coaching experience at nearly every level, from Team USA to the Colorado Rockies, Coach Weinstein is a living encyclopedia of catcher development, game management, and baseball strategy. You've probably seen his wisdom all over X, formerly Twitter, at J1Catching, where he shares daily gold nuggets for catchers, coaches, and baseball lifers alike. But here's the deal. This episode isn't just for catchers. We unpack what makes a great game caller behind the dish, how youth catchers can build leadership without burning out, why the one-knee catching revolution is more than a fad, and how busy parents can actually support their athletes' development without becoming overbearing or overwhelmed. Whether your kid's just picking up the gear, calling their own pitches, or you're trying to get more strategic as a coach, Coach Weinstein drops practical field-tested advice you can use this week. Plus, we hit on hot-button topics like framing in the age of robo-umps, effective velocity with his longtime friend Perry Husband, and how to handle pressure with maturity even at 12U. So if you've ever wondered what really matters behind the plate, this episode will flip the lights on. Let's jump in. Hey, Coach. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, gotcha.
Cool. Are you at home now?
I am for a few days. Yep.
Are you? And then so are you based? Where are you based out of? Is that Chicago?
No, San Luis Obispo, but I work remotely or I go in periodically with a big club. I was just in Sacramento with them.
Okay. Very nice. Well, yeah, that's a pretty cool deal. You said you were spring trading. You got the free pass over there. I'm sure they're paying your way, food, and the whole thing. So you get to teach. You get to teach for a listener.
That's my contract.
Right? Very cool. Well, hey, I got a lot of questions to ask you. A lot of good questions. None of these are going to be we're attacking you or any of that. So don't worry about that. And I'll get this all done and published. Hopefully, maybe not next week, but the week after. We should get that because I have Coach Zen Penny, who's another hitting instructor I'll have next week that I'm going to publish his. So we'll get yours in a couple of weeks or so, and I'll get you all the information. And
Perfect.
Sound good?
Yep.
So first question or two, I just more of interest in catching. So I was an outfielder. I was as far away from catching as possible. And, I played back in the day when catchers stood on 2 feet and just crouched down like a normal catching position. So what really prompted, I noticed over the last probably 5-10 years, this like one knee thing, like what changed in these last 5 or 10 years with that?
Well, better performance. That's why, professional baseball in general is very slow to change. It's a pretty static situation. And overnight, just about everybody went down on a knee. This was first day of spring of Major League Baseball this year. Every catcher caught on a knee. And the reason they did that is because they perform better. It's easier on their body, requires less flexibility, balance, strength, and they get better performance. It's very, very simple. They don't do stuff that doesn't help them win games. It just doesn't happen.
Sure. I know you've probably seen some of the detractors or the cons of, I guess, the knee down. Why can you address maybe some of those objections? I know some of them where they have a hard time blocking certain balls or blocking balls in general, maybe certain sides, maybe strikes, depending on where the umpire is at on their side, are a little bit more deceptive. Can you address some of those?
Well, I can't address what individual people think. I just don't know what they're basing their decisions on. I just know that the data supports receiving, blocking, and throwing from a one knee situation relative. The biggest objection to one knee is generally in the blocking situation because they assume that just because you're in a traditional 2-foot stance that you would block the same pitch. But the fact of the matter is you probably wouldn't anyway. And the fact of the matter is also that when you're down on a knee, you're closer to the ball in the dirt. You don't have to make that transitional move to get down. And It's just the data supports it, and and if you if you believe in fact-based decisions, you'd look at the data, and that's I have no dog in the fight. I don't care if you catch standing on your head. If it gives you a better chance to block, throw, and receive, and it helps us reduce the run expectancy, then I'm all for it. And it's very individualized. And if a guy catches better in a traditional stance, I have no problem with that. It's all based on the quantifiable data that tells us we're saving more runs by using a particular technique.
Hmm. And what I like, my big technicality. So I'm a hitting guy, and I love a safe swing, a swing that doesn't wear the body down, namely like the lower back or even the cervicals in the spine. So when you say that this is a lot safer on their body, I assume hips and ankles, things like that.
Yeah, I just think that when you have to support your weight on 2 feet and have 2 points of contact relative to 3 points of contact, that there's less stress on your body. I think that's one of the biggest reasons that catchers adopted it from Jump Street. That just after the game they weren't as fatigued, and it just didn't require as much effort to catch from a knee down situation. There was more stability and less you didn't have to balance the balance component of that particular stance was not as stringent as it is within a traditional stance. But again, very individualized.
Mhm.
Higashioka catches primarily in a very low profile 2 foot stance. He mixes in one knee down, and now Real Muto is throwing more from a traditional 2 foot stance. But again, there's a large standard deviation relative to what guys are doing with that one knee stance and throwing situations. A lot of catchers are now transitioning from that one knee to more of an angled knee up and traditional stance when the runner breaks. And so if you watch enough baseball and pay close enough attention, you'll see a lot of things that how people organize their body, and it's very, very different based on their physical constraints and physical abilities and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is production, and they're going to, whether it's a hybrid where I catch on a knee down with no runners on base and a traditional stance with runners on base, or in certain situations. But what we're seeing right now is predominantly knee down stances.
Are you seeing pretty big cut or drastic cut in the pop times from single knee to double knee up?
No,
No.
basically the same, because
Mm,
you're people say, oh, he's down on the knee. How can he throw? Well, they don't catch the ball down on the knee. They
mm,
make a transition move. The runner breaks and they come off that knee.
mhm,
The guys that are locked down on that knee, they don't throw very well. But the ones that and there are very few in the big leagues that do that, and the ones that do it are working not to do it, and so you're seeing a lot of transition moves to get up into a more of a 2 foot stance when the runner breaks. I think one of the things where you can be vulnerable is to the fake break, but we don't see very many fake breaks in big league baseball because the hitters don't like it, because it breaks their concentration or
mhm,
focus when they get a lot of movement on the bases. So consequently, we don't see a lot of fake break action. But I think we probably could or should or do see more of that in amateur baseball.
And so that to my question on that, so amateur baseball, you're going to see all kinds of different things. And so what would your what would your advice be to a youth catcher that may be listening to this, that's seeing those late break runners
When you're seeing fake breaks or
or
delay
fake breaks?
steal
Yeah.
type things, and
Mhm.
I just think that you have to evaluate the situation, and when you make that transitional move, it has to be smooth and minimal enough where you're not detracting from the umpire's ability to call it a strike.
Gotcha. So stick it, stick the call, basically.
No, no, no. Basically, minimum body movement. So you're not really jumping up when that
Mm,
runner breaks, that you make
mm,
a minimal, maybe a knee up move or a minimal move to get to that transition to be able to throw. But and the receiving piece doesn't change a lot for you in terms of holding the pitch. I think that's what you're referring to, sticking the
mhm,
pitch or
mhm,
whatever.
mhm, mhm,
In a running situation. Uh, there's going to be a transitional move to get your body in a line to make the throw. You got to make sure that you don't pop straight up and block the
mhm,
umpire out, because in that case, if he doesn't see it, he's got to call a pitch a ball. And I think that sometimes you have the opportunity to, in those situations where it's a running situation and maybe you need the pitch, that there's kind of a transitional move where it's a catch, load, and throw rather than gaining alignment and momentum. So you have a chance to get the pitch and also throw the runner out. Unfortunately, with the really premium blue chip runners, that's probably not an option unless they don't get a really good jump or you get a particularly good pitch to throw on where you can make a good transfer, or your pitcher has got a good leg and gives you a chance to throw him out because he's quicker to the plate.
Gotcha. My last kind of interest question before I get to some of my list of questions is, what you guys think of the ABS system? Some of the guys you talk to, what do you think about it?
I kind of like the challenge piece.
Hmm.
The straight ABS system is I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah, me
I don't
neither.
think the hitters will be a big, or the pitchers will be a big fan of. It'll really shrink the strike zone. The strike zone is shrinking right now because the umpires are not calling fringe pitches strikes at the same rate they were in previous years. Last year, the SL plus on True Media strike looking plus was 100.1. This year it's down to 96, which is a considerable drop of
Mm-hmm.
balls that are not swung at, that are not being called strikes, that are 50-50 shadow or extra balls, because there's no buffer zone anymore. It used to be that balls that were close to the strike zone, if the umpire called it a strike, he'd get credit for getting it right. If he called it a ball, he'd also get credit for calling it right. And now there is no buffer zone. It's either a ball or a strike, and the umpires are evaluated on whether they got it right or not. And the trend is they're trending again. We're talking about a small sampling here in 2025, but they're trending toward those really close pitches are more often are getting called balls rather than strikes. That will change with if they do, and again in all of minor leagues or in Double A and Triple A, they have a challenge system, or maybe it's just Triple A. I'm not sure. Whereas any of those pitches can be challenged, so now they'll, I think that's it's good for the umpires. It shows how good they are. It'll be good for
Mm-hmm.
the hitters and pitchers and catchers, and to showing them that maybe their judgment not is not always as good as they think it is, but it'll be good for the fans because it's interesting when that thing comes up on the board and you show a pitch that's a 16th of an inch off the plate and it's called a ball and they challenge it. And I think it the fans will like it as well.
Yeah, I like that too. I don't want the umpires to be completely replaced by AI. I want that human element as well. And I do like the challenge system. And I don't know if two is the answer or three or one or 10. I don't know what it is, but it was kind of fun to watch some of the, whether it was, I think it was during spring training, there was a couple of catchers or one catcher, can't remember what team he was playing for. He had a hard time with it. And so he lost both strikes, or pitcher, whoever it was. But there was one catcher, I can't remember who it was. He was really good with it. And so you don't lose it. You don't lose it if you guess right, if you do it right and there's a strategy to it. So baseball is such a strategy sport. I actually love the idea.
Well, I know as a fact that our minor league catchers over time, they learn the strike zone better, and because if they don't challenge a pitch and they come back in the dugout, they can look on the
Hmm.
computer and
iPad or
see if it
something.
was a ball or a strike. So they learn when they can challenge and when they can't. And certainly, certain times in the game, real early in the game, maybe you don't want to challenge, but and then maybe later in the game you do. But just having the dashboard that you can look at, and over time you learn what is a strike and what isn't a strike.
Hmm. What do you think about framing and the ABS system? Do you think framing's going to die out? Do you think it's going to change? How do you think that's going to affect that?
No, we're only talking about two challenges, and they could lose those two challenges in the first three innings. And again, there might be some situations where catchers in certain situations with no runners on, maybe even bait hitters into
Mm,
challenging, and by the way they caught the ball or whatever. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I could see that there'll
mm,
be some discussion on that, and
mm,
there'll be some gamesmanship relative to uh, guys forcing or encouraging guys to challenge when it's a strike, but you caught it poorly and they thought it was a ball, or you get some flack coming out of the dugout. But it happened. The challenge happens so fast. The dugout piece probably doesn't come into play very much.
I like that. So maybe using it as a strategy to bait or entrap players to to burn off one. I love
Right, exactly.
I love that. So a couple of my questions here that I have written down. So pitch calling is a huge responsibility for catchers. So what are some simple strategies parents can teach their young catchers at home to start mastering this skill without overwhelming their schedules?
Well, number one, pitch call to the pitcher's strengths, and I think just from a setup, especially with young players and young pitchers and even big league pitchers, the command is we think the best target hitters in the world have great command, and the average miss is in
Mm,
the 11 to 14 inch range, and so I think sitting in the middle of the plate and pitching to contact, we talk about the rule of 68. Really, it's the rule of 70 or 71 that uh, about 70% of all fairly hit balls in the big leagues are outs. And
mm,
so you have to rely on contact, even hard hit balls that where it's a 55, 56% success rate, the odds are still okay. And when you get in leverage counts and if a ball's hit hard, chances are it's going to be caught half the time and if it stays in the yard.
mhm,
And so pitching to contact and pitching to the pitcher's strengths is important. I think that that young pitchers and young catchers tend to pitch away from contact and they're trying to throw perfect pitches, and this is not a game of perfect. And so just
mhm,
having that number one with the younger guys, just staying in the middle of the plate and not trying to make perfect pitches and forcing swings is a good starting place for a philosophy as relative to pitch calling. Now it becomes a lot more sophisticated once you get into professional baseball and certainly in the big leagues. The
mhm.
data, the amount of data that you have and the amount of command that professional pitchers have relative to amateur pitchers is significant.
Yeah, because it's crazy is that so I coach my son's team. He's back here behind me, but this is a younger picture of him. So he's 12. And when you're pitching for a strikeout or even swing and miss, you gotta throw three pitches, right? For three strikes. Because a lot of the kids in our league are upswingers, and it's not by design, it's just that they don't know how to control the barrel yet. And so throwing at the armpit or at the top of the strike zone is always in kind of an easy way to just throw it in there and they're going to swing and miss, swing and miss, swing and miss. But you're talking about if you do a perfect inning or what they call immaculate inning, nine pitches, three strikeouts, that's still nine pitches. If you're pitching a contact, then you're talking, hey, what if I get out of this inning in 3 to 5 pitches because you got your defense playing behind you, and that's a lot better deal. And typically three strikeouts in a row 3 times is a challenge to do. There's going to be some balls mixed in there, might be some hit by pitches, things like that. So I'm really kind of giving a little bit more ear to pitching to contact and weak contact, trying to get him weak contact like a Greg Maddux style. So I really like that.
Well, one of the things in amateur baseball, and you have umpires that are not professional umpires,
Yeah.
and when you get hitters start swinging and a guy pounding the strike zone, their tendency is to call more strikes. And when you're scattering the ball all over and it's ball, ball, ball,
Mm,
and then you throw a close pitch, it tends to be called a ball. And I think that they get in the strike calling mode. I think that's a good thing.
I love that. For coaches juggling busy practices, how can they efficiently train young catchers to manage games effectively, especially when time is limited?
Well, with limited time, it's very difficult to develop catchers from a pitch calling standpoint, unless you keep it really simple. Because in order to do this thing right, you have to have an after action review with your catchers and your pitchers relative to the pitch calling process, and so with limited time, it becomes difficult. I just think that allowing the catcher to call the game and figure it out on his own and not second guessing the pitch call, because even in the big leagues, it's not the pitch that you throw. Oh, you should have thrown a changeup there instead of a fastball or a breaking ball instead of a changeup. It's usually the quality of the pitch. It's the execution,
Mm,
and it's not the type of pitch that gets you beat. It's usually the execution. So again, I think that you can have those conversations during the inning, between innings, but always in a supportive mode
mm,
and what were you thinking about here and at our level there is always one best pitch, but there also is an option line of pitches, uh, and relative to what's best to throw in a particular situation. But on the amateur level, I just think a well executed strike is a good pitch, no matter
Mhm.
what, whether it's a curveball, fastball, or changeup or whatever.
Right.
So I think that's really what we're aiming for.
Yeah, what we find here locally is that we have a lot of coaches that are calling pitches. And for me, I'm a big fan of effective velocity. My good friend Perry Husband, and so we use effective velocity. Are you familiar with effective velocity, coach? Or?
Perry Husband's one of my best friends. I've
I love
been
it.
involved with Perry for 20 plus years.
I love it. I love it. It's one of my best buddies too. And so part of my challenge, I let my pitchers and catchers, I kind of give them the philosophy. We talk about the main, just foundational philosophy of effective velocity. And so we give them maybe 3 to 5 different pitch sequences just as a model. And say it's three pitches or 4 pitches possibly as an optional one. And I just have them look at that and memorize that and just pick 1 or 2 of those sequences at 12U. And this is more competitive rec. It's not travel ball. So travel ball, you'd probably need 3 or 4 maybe sequences possibly. But I like my pitcher and my catcher to actually call their own game. But there are a lot of coaches that want to control game calling and pitch calling, and especially going through high school. So what are your thoughts on that? Teaching the catchers and pitchers how to do it, or just let the coaches do it?
Well, I really don't think it matters if you do it right. I think one of the things, and you talk about sequences, for me, it's more about one pitch at a time. And the next pitch I call is going to be based on how that pitcher threw this pitch,
Right.
how the hitter reacted to that pitch, and where I think his attention zone is going on the next pitch. So I
Uh-huh.
try not to get too far ahead of myself. And that's even a case in professional baseball. I think you have to use your eyes. I think that we have to find a balance between the iPad and the eyes. As far
Mhm.
as the coach calling the game, I have no problem with that. I think that the young players then they learn how the coach calls the game, and as long
Mhm.
as you have a discourse during or after the game as to hey, why were you doing this? What was your thinking here? And then also giving at certain times giving the pitcher and the catcher right to.
If you love Coach Jerry Weinstein's wisdom in this episode, especially his focus on process over perfection, trusting your instincts behind the plate, and developing pitch calling confidence, then you're going to love what we've built inside the Swing Shift program. Whether your athlete is a catcher, pitcher, or hitter, Swing Shift gives them the tools to show up with game-ready confidence every single time. It's not about gimmicks or trendy drills. It's about structure, simplicity, and results. You'll get daily 3 to 5 minute hitting episodes designed specifically for busy families. No fluff, just focused lessons your athlete can use right away. And it's all built around the same mental and mechanical principles Coach Weinstein emphasizes: timing, connection, and smart decision making under pressure. If you're ready to turn your players' reps into results and help them become the most confident version of themselves on the field, head over now to hittingperformancelab.com/swing shift and start your 7-day free trial. Let's build baseball and softball IQ, one smart swing at a time. Hey, quick timeout before we jump back in. If you're serious about developing your young ball player the right way, especially behind the plate, then you need more than theory. You need gear that works with your athlete's stage of development, not against it. That's exactly what you'll find at the startinglineupstore.com. Our trusted one-stop shop for baseball and softball training tools, handpicked by coaches and pros to fit youth athletes where they are in their journey. In today's episode, Coach Jerry Weinstein dropped gold on catcher development, pitch calling, and reducing unnecessary stress on young bodies. If that resonated, then now's the perfect time to equip your player with tools that reinforce the same principles. From youth catchers gear that protects and promotes movement like Rotex Motion, to swing trainers that support healthy mechanics without gimmicks, you'll find gear here that bridges the gap between smart training and real performance. Tap into pro-level training without overcomplicating it. Check it out now at thestartinglineupstore.com and use coupon code GETFOF at checkout to get 5% your first purchase. And now back to the show.
To change lanes and during the game based on what they're seeing and what they're feeling, change the pitch without feeling that there's any retribution here from the coach because you didn't throw the pitch that he called. I think it's the player's game, and you have to give them the latitude to make those decisions during the game.
Right. Call an audible. Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of one pitch at a time, like maybe having a sequence idea of that, but then you really don't know until you throw that pitch and how the hitter reacts and where their attention is on what you're going to do next time anyway. Because you could think you're going to go fastball down and away, then maybe a splitty or a changeup in that same spot, but it drops off, and then you can go fastball up and in. But you could think that way, but what if the hitter's looking in that down and away position and he swings and hits it, or he swings out in front of it, or different things like that. So I agree. I think it does kind of have to go one pitch at a time on that.
Well, I think there's a lot of ways to do it, but ultimately when we get on the youth level, if we get the hitter to swing the bat, we got a chance to get him out. And it's the same thing in the big leagues. Most of the time you get a hitter out with his pitch. If you look at a guy like Albert Pujols, who's probably one of the best fastball hitters of his generation, 50% of his outs were on fastballs, and they were thrown within his swing zone and outside of his solid contact zone. And
Mhm.
so getting a hitter to swing, and you have a better chance when you throw his pitch, because there's probably a better chance of him swinging at his pitch, and
Mhm.
as long as you're able to locate it.
Right. You've emphasized the catcher's contribution to a team's win. What's one key thing parents can do to help their young athlete understand their value behind the plate, even on tough days? And here in the Valley, we're in middle California. It gets super hot during the summer, so 110 degrees, 115 degrees. So what one key thing parents can do to help their young athlete understand their value behind the plate?
Well, just getting behind the plate is valuable. To get a kid that wants to catch is rare to find. And then whatever he does, regardless, I'm not so tied into outcome. It's a process. If the kid prepares himself and he's making an effort behind the plate, that's good enough for me. That has value. I
Hmm.
don't think there's when we talk about value, I don't think there's any value in being negative when the kid is working his butt off behind the plate.
Hmm. I agree, 100%. Game management can feel daunting for kids new to catching. What's a quick tip you'd give coaches to build confidence in their young players during high pressure moments?
Well, that gets back to the mental game, and pressure is a privilege. When you're in a situation where there's some pressure, I think that's a good thing, and
Hmm.
just learning how to be the best version of yourself in those situations. And again, this is learning how to breathe, learning how to play this game one pitch at a time, and being in control of the controllables. Those are the things that really affect a player's ability to be as good as he can be in the moment.
Yep, I love it. Busy parents often, and by the way, a lot of my parents I gear my content towards are the busy parents, because they got all kinds, whether it's multiple sports, they got multiple academic things like that. So if a parent can't make every game, how can they still support their catcher's growth in pitch calling and decision making from afar?
Well, I think, at a certain point, you have to trust the coach and the people that are there at the moment, and you can't micromanage everything. And I think the big thing is just support your kid in general and make sure that he's enjoying himself and maintains his passion for what he's doing. And I think it's a delicate balance. You have to find the sweet spot in terms of it's his gig there. It's his game. It's not your game. And sometimes he doesn't want to talk about it when he feels like, that the parents are so connected to what he's doing that everything that he does is going to affect them. I think that puts undue pressure on the kid, because then he's trying to sit to satisfy his parents' wants and wishes rather than his own.
Hmm. I love that. And that one of my dads in the past, hitting dads, would describe it as being dad in the car but coach on the field, right? So being able to transition, if you're the head coach or assistant coach of your son's team or your daughter's team, that once you guys get in the car, that you got to transition into dad mode or mom mode, whoever we're talking about, right? So that there's certain there's certain roles that you play as a parent. And I love your advice of you're not we're not living through our kids, because that's something we can't control. And if we're telling our kids, you can control your attitude, your effort, and that kind of thing, it kind of goes with the parent as well, right? Where you support your kid, you love your kid, and tell them you're proud of them and things like that. And if they don't want to talk about it on the way home, they don't want to talk about it on the way home, and then you just have to respect that.
I think that it's a process, and I think that when you get too tied into the outcome of, happy parent because the kid got 3 hits or their team won or they're in a championship game or whatever, I think that that's detracting from what the kid is doing out there. This is his thing, and when it becomes too much of the parents' thing, I think that can not necessarily. I think supportive parents are great, but you got to know your limits and you got to know where your kid needs space and where it needs a little bit more diversity than everything centered around travel, baseball, football, basketball, or whatever. And you just have to have time to be a kid as well.
Right, right. So, what's the most common mistake you see young catchers make when learning to call pitches, and how can coaches correct it without over complicating things?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is that they 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 pitch call to get swings and misses, and they overcall, they overcall pitches. They maybe throw too many breaking balls when a guy's primary strike pitch is the fastball, or too many fastballs when the primary strike pitch is another pitch. I just think that, and a lot of times young catchers just call pitches they can't hit, and
Right.
they try and then they sit too much on the edges and corner pitch too much, and when the pitcher misses, he misses out of the zone. If he's in the middle of the plate and he misses, he's got 12 inches on either side of the target that he can miss and still keep the ball in the strike zone. And I think that those are some of the. I don't deal with young catchers too much anymore, but
Right,
I
right.
just those are the things that in the day were problematic.
Yeah, yeah, nice. So, for parents with kids who play multiple positions, how can they encourage a focus on catching fundamentals without burning out their young athlete? Because catching can be pretty brutal. I have some of my hitters are catchers, and they got the big old giant gear bag, and then they got the squatting for games and games and games. We actually started taking one of our catchers who's really good on our team, and he's playing on another team, a travel team, and we have another catcher as well who's pretty good, not quite as good, but we're splitting their time. So how can you encourage a focus on catching fundamentals without burning out the young athlete?
Well, I just think you have to watch the intensity of the work and how much the throwing piece is the one that I worry about. The kids,
Hmm.
they throw with too much intent too often, and then they'll end up with arm problems. And the kids are pretty resilient. They can they can be out in the park and play all day and be fine. And I think you just have to listen to your kids, and they'll tell you. You just watch what they're doing and don't overschedule them. They need free time too. They need
Hmm.
time to do their video games and watch TV or just relax with their friends, and just giving, not putting too many eggs in one basket, and encouraging diverse activities from kids. And just that's just a general thought for me. And again, there are some kids that they thrive on playing baseball all the time on 19 different teams and playing all different positions, and it's very individualized. You just have to get a good feel for it and communicate with your kids and ask them, hey, we want to do this? Are we trying to do this? And looking for the signs of burnout and stuff like that.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree, and that's kind of the thing is the self-awareness that I see. I see in some coaches, and I don't see in some coaches where they're not talking to the player. Maybe it's whether it's a relationship with them, and or they continue to push them on even though their arm is bothering them or things like that. So what would your what's your protocol typically for the professional level for throwing? Like what's the you talked about high intent throwing versus not high intent throwing. So what do you usually do with your catchers?
Well, it's interesting you talk about that because one of the things, we have two big league catchers, and one of them, we feel probably doesn't throw enough. I think in
Mm.
general, a lot of times, especially when you're playing 100+ games a year, that guys tend to uh, not maybe not throwing up and just save it for the games. I think that we've got two catchers now that are kind of splitting time and catching every other game and doing very well. And so in between games, we're trying to build up throwing volume with lesser intent, more high lob, long toss to build up a foundation so that we can maintain our arm strength throughout the season. And again, very individualized, but every day, we do it in professional baseball. We do a very good job of evaluating fatigue, and we've got numerous uh, hard pieces of hardware like catapult, and we know if a guy's in a fatigue mode, and we also ask him point blank, hey, where are you today? 1 to 10, how's your arm feel? And then so that and most professional players are very good about their effort levels and recovery and diet and sleep and work in the training room and things like that, so that they're paying attention to their bodies and doing the best they can to maintain their levels and even increase their skill level during the season. But in order to do that, they have to be physically able to do that. So the intent and the amount of work is critical. And again, you have to listen to your body on that.
Yeah. You mentioned the catapult. Is that like the same? It looked like the soccer players are wearing it looked like a training bra. Is that
Yes,
kind of the same? Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
And there's a lot of sensors out there. That Driveline has a pulse sensor, and there
Mm,
are all kinds of sensors that, relative to arm but also physically, the catapult will tell you, relative to exertion, and yeah, they've done a lot of running or have done how much they've done in the weight room, and everything affects everything. So
mhm,
you're trying to quantify and monitor as much as you can so that uh, guys do not break down, because the best ability is availability. If you can't play,
mhm.
you're not helping your ball club. And so again, uh, we don't want to underwork, but we don't want to overwork. We again trying to find that Goldilocks effect, not too cold, not too hot,
Mhm,
just right. And
mhm.
so and by having diagnostic tools like we have, we're better able to do that.
Yep, I love it. Coaches often have a limited time to prep for games. So what's a fast, especially like tournament games? So what's a fast, effective drill you'd recommend to sharpen a catcher's game management skills before the first pitch?
Well, I just familiarity with his own pitcher. A lot of times in those travel deals, a kid will show up to pitch for it, and you never caught him before, and you've never seen him. So just having that conversation, hey, what's your best pitch? What do when you need to throw a strike, what's your put away pitch?
Mhm,
Et cetera, et cetera. Just knowing your pitcher would be number one. That's at every level the most
mm,
important. If you had two choices, I have a great scouting report on your team, or I really know my pitcher, and you had a choice of one or the other, I overwhelmingly would want to know my pitcher, because that's going to give you the best chance to win, in my opinion. So knowing your pitcher, his strengths and weaknesses, and then adapting and adjusting during the game, because just because historically certain things have been his strength, they may change during the game. It happens a lot in professional baseball, where we see a guy with high carry fastballs with high induced vertical break. All of a sudden today they don't have the carry that they
mm,
normally have. So you have to adapt and adjust, and that's that one pitch at a time, and using your eyes over the iPad. You got to be good in the moment, and obviously you go in with a plan, but the plan can change after the first pitch of the game.
I love it. I love it. How can parents spot if their young catcher is struggling with the mental side of the position, and what's a practical way to help them reset? So that sounds like a little bit more of the burnout type of thing.
Parents know. I would hope that parents know their kids. They
Mm,
know the body language and the signs of those types of things, and just overall communication, and less chance of that happening when they have a balanced environment relative to school,
mm,
athletics, and free time. And
mm.
so I think you just have to, and you have to you have to be able to communicate with your kids. You have to be transparent. You tell them what you're feeling and what you're seeing, and tell me what you're feeling, because you're it's more important that it's right for you than it is for me. And so just that communication piece is, to me, is really important, and you can't be afraid of asking the wrong question. You just have to, you have to ask questions to get the right answers.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And also to those coaches out there too, you gotta let your catchers know, your pitchers know, your high throwers, high intent throwers know that they can come to you and let you know how their arm's doing. If, like I said, the catcher I mentioned earlier, he had 3 games or 4 game tournament on the weekend. We were playing that Monday, and his dad actually said he'd be fine to catch Monday's game, like the whole game. But then he came up to me at the beginning of the games like, coach, can I just catch half the game because my legs are just super sore, and I'm okay with that. And I made some extra moves. I mean, it sucks to have to change the lineup and field assignments around, not the lineup but the field assignments around. But I'm okay with that. Like I want to make sure that he's in a good state of mind, especially before the game. It doesn't feel like he's going to have to catch, at our level, 6 innings, right? All 6 innings. So if it's 3 innings, that's a lot easier for a guy who's got legs that are sore.
Well, I always err on the side of caution because when guys get fatigued, then they get into bad ranges of motion. That's where they get
Hmm.
hurt. But
Hmm.
also having that your relationship with your kids or your players is not just about only about their athletics. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah, I love that. Last question, coach, and I love everything that you've shared, and and catching to me is like a foreign language, is like German, speaking German. So that's not something I really ever played growing up. I played, I think, a couple times in Little League. That was fun. So I'm learning a lot in this from you, definitely. And I follow you on Twitter, so I love your post as well. So last question, looking back at your own journey, what's one piece of advice you wish a coach or parent had given you as a young catcher that today's families could apply?
That's interesting because, obviously I'm fairly old and I never really had a catching coach and there
Mm,
wasn't good information out there. And, I wish I was born 50 years later because the information out there now is so accessible with social
mhm,
media and
mhm,
there's so many good, especially in catching and it's a fraternal group and everybody's not at each other's throats except when you talk about knee down or traditional stance
mhm,
and I think that everybody is there's just more information. I wish I
mhm,
was born into, but ultimately it probably was good for me because then it forced me to figure it out for myself because there weren't people there with info necessarily that could help you at the time, or I wasn't in an environment where either even in college where I got would get information. And I think I've had to go out on my own, especially as a coach for the last 60 plus years
mhm.
and find information and figure things out and try stuff and experiment I think that if anything I would maybe have been a little different player and a different time of playing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I say the same thing to my hitters about hitting. Whenever we hit, I said, man, if I knew the stuff that I'm teaching you now back then, but then, like you said, it's like the butterfly effect. You don't want to go back in time and completely change that because then the learning process of you going through all of that and going through the challenges you did and getting to the sticking points and having to overcome that, we wouldn't have had the been blessed with the knowledge that you bring and wisdom to the game now, because I think we learn more when we do bad than we learn less when we do good. When we win games, we don't learn as much as when we lose games. And I've had seasons where we've lost every game but one. We tied one, and we're having a pretty good season this year where we're primarily winning. And I'm forcing our players to grow and that kind of thing. But yeah, there's a lot of information out there, and that can be a bad thing as well. But making sure that they're following folks like yourself, I think, are where they're going to win out. And anybody that you're associated with, like Perry Husband, and that's kind of what my journey online has done is Perry, and then Perry knows people, and I love. And anybody I meet that's friends with Perry is a friend of mine, as I always say. So, Coach, I appreciate your time. Where can people find you? Do you have anything? I know you're working for an organization, so it's not like some people come on and they have products or they have anything like that. So, I mean, anything, whatever you have, if you
No,
have clinics or.
yeah, I just on X or Twitter, whatever. I put something out every day,
Mhm.
and just my opinions. It's
Mhm.
not the gospel. It's not a sermon from the mount or etched in stone or anything. And then I've got some stuff on WeinsteinBaseball.com, and the
Mhm.
Twitter is JW capital JW lowercase on and capital catching. And so if you're interested in info and use it if it works for you, and if it doesn't,
Mhm.
don't use it. But I just kind of get stuff out there. Some of it's okay, some of it, you you just have to talk to. Some people like it, some people don't, some are in between. But I'm not a big promoter of stuff that I've done in terms of books and stuff. I do have a catching book on Weinstein catching.
Okay, good. Yeah, all good stuff. And that's and people will be interested. And like I said, if you fair friend of Perry's, a friend of mine, and from all the tweets that I've seen of yours, I think it's great. Gold nuggets. This is kind of a lower in my knowledge threshold on catching. I haven't really dove into that a lot. So, as long as I can learn from somebody who's been doing it, like you said, 60 years of coaching, I mean yeah, how can you go against that?
Well, one thing you got to realize that of all the positions on the field, the number one position in defensive runs saved is the catcher. And he just has so many touches during the course of a season, and everyone can affect the outcome of the game relative to runs saved or runs lost. And so, yeah, every good team that wins has a good catcher. So, develop your catchers.
Well, I'll tell you this, coach, and this will be the last thing I'll let you go, is this year in the draft for our 12U team, I've been using a lot of AI recently over the last couple seasons, ChatGPT, and so I went into this draft with an actual plan. I didn't do that in the last ones. I was just trying to get thumpers and guys, decent arms or whatever. But this time around, my whole goal was to control the run game this year because I felt like that was the biggest thing last year that we lacked and that I kind of found out in our All-Star season. And so as I'm making my list of players from our evaluation to draft early, deciding on who we're going to pull in the first through third rounds and then the fourth through the sixth or seventh rounds, I wanted to get a couple left-handed pitchers just for that ability to be able to pick runners off at first base, which you're going to have most of your opportunities are going to be over there. And I did have catcher on my mind. Like I wanted to get a really good catcher at first. My assistant, who we ended up getting his son as a catcher, he's our best catcher, but I wanted to get a backup one as well. I wanted to get another one that was decent. And so it was funny through AI as I'm working through it. I would say, okay, first round, I'm thinking about getting this lefty pitcher. He can hit too, decent arm. And so, you sure you don't want to get another catcher? No, I want to get the left-handed arm. So, you sure you don't want to get another backup catcher? It kept saying. And so I took its advice and we got another backup catcher, and it's like so much better this year with two decent catchers. One's really good. The other one is almost just as good. He's trained. He's getting, both of them go to a catching coach in town. And I know the catching coach. He's really good. I played with him at Fresno State, and it's been great. And I hear the biggest gripe from all the other teams is we need another catcher. So I learned this year firsthand how important a catcher or two are.
Yeah, well, I think I'm partial to catching too. I think they really have a significant effect on the outcome of the game.
Yep, I love it. Well, Coach, hey, I'm truly blessed. Thank you so much for sharing what you shared. And like I said, I'll get this stuff over to you. We'll probably get this thing published not next week, but the week after. And I'll let you know all that, and I'll kind of give you a little blurb that you can just copy and paste out with the link to everything. So
okay,
again, Coach,
thanks.
If you say see Perry before I do, say hi to him for me.
Yeah, I haven't. I talked to him, but I haven't seen him for since I was managing in the Cal League, and we'd go into Lancaster, and he'd come out and spend some time with our hitters.
Yeah. He's a great guy. Great guy. I get lost in hours and hours of conversation with him. So It's having to find the time because I love it. It's not that I don't like spending 3 hours on the phone with Perry, because by the end of that, my brain's fried in a good way, and I've learned so much more. So
yeah, good man.
All right, Coach.
Buddy.
Thank you, sir. Have a good rest of your week.
All right. See ya.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Swing Smarter Hitting Training Podcast. If today's conversation sparked new ideas or gave you that aha moment, don't keep it to yourself. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with other baseball or softball families who want to grow their game the smart way. To dive deeper into hitting strategies, swing mechanics, and performance training tailored for your athlete, head over to hittingperformancelab.com. There, you'll find free resources, daily video lessons, and premium programs to help your hitter build power, confidence, and consistency at the plate. Until next time, train smarter, not harder,